Riddle me this. What has 28 days and multiple subjects? The answer is a question. Yinz Dahn to listen. I'm Greg, aka Cookbook Thor, the god of thunder and Halupki, and I'm joined as always by.
I'm Rob, aka Jibs Warrior, aka trying to thaw out. So it's been an interesting last few weeks, roller coaster of temperature and weather, if you will. But that leads us to today's episode, where we're going to talk about the month that wasn't very interesting, I guess you could say, and that's February 2025. So it's a bit harsh, but it really wasn't interesting. We had Groundhog Day. That always starts February out. It's kind of big around here. It's one of the most famous residents of Pennsylvania, so we have to celebrate Groundhog Day and watch the movie. Then there was Toyhio. There was a big collector con called Hoosier Collecticon, which was out in Indianapolis area. We didn't go to that one, but I heard a ton about it, and I was also able to get some goodies from it because of the good friends
Yeah,
that we have who vended there.
yeah. So there was
Uh,
definite local representation there.
Lots of it, yeah, for sure. I went to Carved in Ice, which is kind of like one of those festivals in the local town that they do ice sculptures that every year seems to be plagued by either too cold or too warm. And this year was kind of like right where you'd like it to be. So it kind of worked out for once. So that was pretty cool.
Mhm.
And then we're getting onto the edge of that spring training baseball stuff. Everybody's reporting down to Florida or Arizona to start the old baseball season. So I really I see a Rube Waddell discussion in our future, Greg. I really do. What's what
I look forward to that very much.
what better way to start off a baseball season than introduce those who don't know about Rube to Rube? But I was also able to stop at Comics Closet out in Shrewsbury. A good friend of ours, Greg. He one of his one of two establishments of his. I finally got to stop out there. He was able to broker a deal for me that I might touch on here a little later on. But I had been through that area several times for work and other activities out near the Gettysburg, Hanover area. I think you're familiar with from some ventures out that direction as well. But I
Indeed.
had never gotten to stop out there, so that was good. And I know you were made it up to Bell's Comics and Cards up in Grove City. They got a
I
little bit
did.
of a venture going on up there, so we
Mhm.
don't have much input on anything, maybe other than Toy Hio, but we have a lot to talk about, if that makes sense. So, I figure we might as well get into it with one of the bigger ones, and that's Toy Hio, Greg. I think we
Mhm.
both had success, although in different facets, I guess you could say. But I don't think we've talked about Toy Hio before. We've had Rick on, the gentleman who runs it, but what is Toy Hio, Greg?
Well, Toyhio, aka Toyhio, aka Toyhio, and yeah, you may know what that is if you've listened to us before because we've touched on it. I don't know how deep we've gone, but it's been certainly been mentioned, and we did have Rick on as a guest before. So it's a long running toy show in the Youngstown, Ohio area, founded by our friends Rick Fusselman and the late great Tom Troll, and it's really grown into a true destination event that runs 3 times a year. You have people coming from all over to see all the good stuff that Rick packs in there, and it's really a mind blowing selection of toys every time from vendors from all over, and also has multiple wrestling guests at every show, which really adds to the appeal. And the wrestling guests are often toy collectors themselves, and they join in the fun of treasure hunting. And it's a big favorite of the guys on the Major Wrestling Figure podcast, who are real trendsetters in the wrestling figure collecting world. And yeah, they love Toy Hio very much. And you may wonder though, oh, why did I call it those two other funny names? I said Toy Hio and I said Toy Hoo, and you don't see those printed on the flyers so much. But um,
Yet, yet.
I don't know if we ever touched on this in our previous discussions, did we?
I don't think. No.
Well, that had to do with Luke Gallows, WWE superstar. I believe he left the company recently, but he's been in pretty much every major promotion in the last few years. I'm sure you'll see him again before too long. But
Hmm.
he
Hmm.
was a guest at one show, and he pronounced the show Toyhio, and it stuck, and it just became stylized as Toyhihu based on that. He was calling it Toyhio the whole time until Brian Myers of the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast and TNA Wrestling corrected him and said it's Toy Ohio, and and it had not occurred to uh, old Doc Gallows before that, but it's it's the cool kids call it Toyhihu,
Yeah, that
and
kind of
you
stuck.
may you may hear us do that, and yeah, the major guys are all repeat guests, as is Dan Housen, who was at the most recent show, and he was accompanied this time by Sky Blue from AEW and Luchasaurus from AEW.
Hmm.
Alas, Alf was on the flyer, and he was not there from Elmac to sign autographs,
Which
to the disappointment of some. But
which would have been a treat. Would have been a treat,
yeah,
but I think he's a hard get.
yeah, he'd have to be let out of whatever government custody he's in after that Project Alf movie. Wow, oh, that's a
I,
topic on its own.
I forgot about that. Oh man, I hadn't thought about that until just now in probably 15 years. I'm gonna have to go watch that now, if you can even find it.
I have a funny feeling it might be on YouTube.
That's probably the best source because I know that Alf the show was on Tubi, Pluto. It's on one of the free services, I think.
Hmm.
I also have a box set, so I could always reminisce that way rather than Project Alf the movie.
Yep.
Could always get into the comics too with some of their interesting covers.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a few notorious offenders that I have yet to track down, but I have the first issue,
Nice,
so that's
nice.
kind of special.
Yeah, yeah. So, it's funny stuff. But yeah, I mean, the show itself, I think I was a little more boots on the ground than you were, Greg. I think you got a chance to
Indeed.
be a patron more than anything. So I actually help Rick as much as I can when I'm not on a family vacation, which he kind of gives me the business for every now and then because his his October show is always around my anniversary, so it kind of takes me out of commission. And then last year in February, we had a Disney trip, which we talked about on our year in review. But that was that same time as well. So I only made it to one Toyhio last year, and that was the June show. So I'm already 1 for 1 this year, and was able to provide talent transpo was my task for this show. But I was able to shop a little preview the night before and do a little bit late in the day on Saturday. But you got into it a bit more than I did because you actually got to see, I guess, the way it's supposed to be seen, and that's with all vendors set up and all merchandise available. Unlike me, that was a preview and then scavenged late in the day. So, um, I did have some interesting pickups and that, but Greg, I'll let you break the ice on those type of things.
Oh yeah, yeah. I did an early bird pass, which yeah got me in the door. Um, yeah, about an hour before the general admission, and I was pretty successful, I have to say, with the goodies I found. I was on a mission to find the '80s LJN wrestling superstars figures, which were the big rubber wrestling figures that everyone remembers, which are they're plentiful, but they're hard to find in good condition because the paint rubs off really easy, and they were just fun to bounce off the ground and maybe whack other kids with back in the day.
Yeah.
So I did find a few of those. I found the Magnificent Morocco and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Demolition Axe, who is one of the rarer ones, but I did a little repaint job on him, and I changed him into his partner Smash, who never actually got a figure in that line. and I have another Axe figure coming my way, thanks to our buddy Chris at VHS Crypt
Mhm.
for that. And I'll be repainting that into another look for Axe, and I'm going to have them match up the way that they looked on the March 1989 WWF magazine. So
You'll have to do a shadow box with the magazine in there.
I most likely will.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I found, I guess my big find was during setup. So I apologize to all of you folks who didn't get a crack at these, but um, I did a preview walk around and I saw a couple of items that I almost grabbed, but I'm glad I waited because as I was perusing one of the aisles, I saw somebody who had two pinatas from 1990, still brand new with tags, never been filled with candy. The holes are still exposed on the top of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So it's Leonardo and Raphael, and they are kind of the stuff of nightmares. I mean, the eyes are just weird. They look as if you blew on them wrong, they would disintegrate and just basically turn into a pile of confetti. But they are robust, and I had never seen them before. Lots of folks that I talked to, during setup were like they had never seen them before. And if it for it to be a turtle thing that I had never seen before, it was one of those things where it wasn't going to be, you wouldn't have to twist my arm to take it home. So I did him and haw on it, and I'm gonna give a big shout out on the assist to Kip from D&E. Um, he was uh, he was a facilitator of the deal just because I kept him and hawing, and he basically said, well, what's your ceiling number? And I was like, well, I wouldn't want to pay more than X, and he basically went over and said, I bet you I can get it for that. I was like, have at it, and then basically he came walking down through the show floor with two pinatas. So, so
Excellent.
yeah, an assist to Kip on that, and that was something that I had, no intention of buying because I didn't know it existed. But it's one of those things that you can find when you're at Toyhio because you go and you're like, I didn't know that was even a thing, and then you see it and end up, having it in your collection or having the ability to have it in your collection. But there's a lot of stuff at Toyhio that we don't even buy that we see. So, I mean, Greg, did you see anything like that was, you know, um, you saw it and didn't take it home with you?
Yeah, there were a few things that I just wasn't prepared to uh, break the bank on. I mean, I did pretty well. I mean, I had an assortment of other stuff I did bring home. I got a stack of VHS tapes off of our buddy Scott, who always brings a nice assortment and has been getting more and more popular for that. And there was another vendor who had a bin of tapes that were of slightly lesser quality, but they were great nonetheless. And one of them was had, and I haven't even watched it yet. It's a educational rap video starring Fred Flintstone and Yogi Bear. So that can only be brilliant. And another good one off of our buddy Sean was George Romero's Monkey Shines on VHS.
Mm.
And yeah, from Scott, I got Disorderly starring the Fat Boys, An American Werewolf in London, and the Canon film Street Smart starring Morgan Freeman and Christopher Reeve. So that was pretty good. And I managed to pick up. I found a Green Lantern battery. It's a it's actually a coin bank, but I'm going to use it as a cosplay prop for my Guy Gardner cosplay. And I've got some GI Joe accessories I needed, and a set of Thundercats Viewmaster reels off my buddy Derek, who is a fixture there. And I even got a NECA Wolfman glow in the dark Wolfman figure off of our friend Bob from Time Bomb Toys, which is a fixture of horror stuff in Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
And so I did pretty well. My bags were starting to strain. If I had put any more stuff in there, I might have had one of them break on me, and that would have been pretty embarrassing. So it's just as well I didn't buy any of that stuff that I uh, that I decided to pass on, like the LJN Andre the Giant that D&E Collectibles had, which was too nice for me to repaint.
Mm,
And or the oh my goodness, I don't know if you saw probably the rarest LJN they had with them.
no.
Um, it was Corporal Kirchner, who's not a rare character, but this version was. It's the one with the beard painted on.
Oh,
They're pretty scarce.
yeah, yeah.
You even loose ones that are beat up can fetch several $100s. And yeah, this one was no, this one was minty. It was no exception. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And that is that the one that has the stubble molded or just the paint? I think there's the
This one
stubble.
was just paint.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it had a full beard painted on.
Yeah, they did. That's the thing with these LJNs for anybody in the audience that is an aficionado of them, they're aware. But for those who might not be, is it just it almost seems like it was just a matter of what the factory was doing that day in some
Yep.
of these situations. So, but they did their randomness with some sort of consistency that made these things, not just a factory error, but literally like a different variant. So, I once danced with the LJN completist crowds, and I exited the dance floor on that.
I
It's
don't
just
blame you.
it's just difficult to try to be a completionist in that space.
Yes,
But
indeed.
anything that piqued your interest that you didn't bring home with you,
Hmm. Well, other
other
than that,
other than that.
other than Andre, not too much. I wouldn't say I went a hog wild with all I bought, but I was pretty satisfied with my haul, and I didn't leave too much on the table. There might have been a couple Toxic Crusader figure upgrades I considered that I decided against, but I got to leave something to hunt for the next day.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
I wasn't too worried about that. The chase is better than the catch.
I saw a few things that if pinatas wouldn't have been in the mix, that I would have maybe liked to have brought home. The first thing, like I said before, I saw the pinatas was, I don't know if you saw them. They were kind of in the center room, and if for those of you who haven't been to Toyhio, there's kind of a main show space, a center show space, and then a back room show space, all very open, but definitely three different sections of the expo center. But the middle room, along one of the glass like mirrored walls, there were, I don't know, they're about 3 to 3.5 feet tall. They're the cardboard cutout of turtles, standees, but they're smaller. They're not your large size standees. And the gentleman had the entire set. And I don't have them. I think he's had them there for quite a while, if I'm not mistaken. It's not someone that was a first time person, but I almost pulled the trigger on that. That would have severely dampened my ability to get pinatas. So I made the right call, but those were one. Um, uh, the Shogun Rodan. I don't know if you saw that our friends at D&E managed to get one of those recently. So that will be coming to their show. I don't know if you saw that post, Greg, that they picked up that large collection of Shogun stuff.
Oh goodness! Oh, that was the mother load of Shogun Warriors. Yeah,
Yeah,
like I mean, you could practically swim in them like the ball pit at Chuck E. Cheese.
yeah, that's something else. But it. I don't know. I mean, to say to find that collection, okay, is one thing, but the person who had that collection is we always. I think in the vendor space, I think in the person D&E who found that. Um, I think in that mental capacity, I think it's awesome when these guys find this stuff to try to rehome it. But I also sometimes harken back to the person who had that collection and how long it probably took them to get that. But the one thing that they had in that photo, which gives me hope because I saw one. Actually, I saw a vendor with two of that 1979 Rodan Shogun Warrior. Very nice condition. Wingtips were all there, that sort of thing. It's like a $700-800 piece. Probably maybe even a little more if everything's cool. But that always piques my interest. But I saw that one there. That was another one that seeing one is one thing, but seeing the same vendor with two is kind of another animal altogether. I did get a pair of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ice skates. I had the roller skates, which our friend, VHS Crypt, Chris, who was on the show with us a couple episodes back, he got me the roller skates a while back, and apparently there was a matching set of ice skates. So those came home with me, along with one of the Jim Lee variant or the Jim Lee editions of the Turtles, which was the Donatello Jim Lee sculpt. They came from that Savage Dragon line. I don't know, Greg, if you're familiar with that, but they did.
Yeah, I've seen it before. Yeah.
Yeah, they did. What Savage Dragon, She Dragon, um, Donatello, Michelangelo, and Raphael, but no Leonardo, which was weird to me. But
Hmm.
I didn't have Donnie. I found him. That was really cool. So, I mean, and I also, on the way out the door Saturday, I bought a HasLab Ghost. Um, Rick, Toyhio, the brains behind Toyhio, he got it in. I think the night of setup, and didn't want to take it home, so I got a deal I couldn't pass up to bring that home. I had been contemplating that after our show because there was one that got sold there. I missed the backing of it. One of my favorite starships from the Star Wars franchise is the Ghost, and the HasLab one's just so cool. So that's took up the entire bed of my truck, kind of bringing it home, and is in a giant box in my basement that I don't know what to do with. I just got a new display case that I put a bunch of stuff in, hoping to make room, and it didn't make enough room. So back to the drawing board on that one. But so I mean, it was successful pickups for me. The one thing that I I saw there that kind of boggled my mind was there was a in the late 90s, Trendmasters was really pumping out Godzilla stuff. And they had that Godzilla Doom Island line. Do you remember that, Greg? I don't know. Wasn't very popular, wasn't very long running, but it
I
was
do remember the
interesting.
Treadmasters Godzilla stuff. Yes.
Yeah, so the Doom Island stuff, they had like maybe a first series of Doom Island toys, which they're not crazy rare. I mean, they're not cheap for sure, but we're talking like, battle armor stuff and, kind of, not just your typical Godzilla spiel, and kaiju stuff. So, it's really like mech suits before this new movie putting mech on on the actual, on King Kong's arm.
Hmm.
But this was series two, which was never released. So these were actual unreleased series two Godzilla Doom Island stuff. And it was the fellows from that 80s toy shop in Buffalo. Um, they were very, very pricey. Obviously, they're not
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
hard copy prototype or anything. They're actually in package. They were just unreleased. So these were ones that probably squeaked through, maybe even in more than likely Canada, given where those guys are. They squeaked into distribution by mistake. Um, Mint in box, and he had like three of the six from that series that were unreleased, at his table, and I must have stopped 3 or 4 times going by, just looking at them, thinking in my head these would be cool to have, but one of those things that's like these would be cool to have, but I'd spend more time explaining what they are to people than actually enjoying them probably. So they did not come home with me, but that was the one
Hmm.
thing that really stands out to me is I didn't get it, but I'll be thinking about it for a long, long time. So, and that's the worst.
Hmm.
But with that, I think, sounds like we filled a few holes in the collection. I know that I got pinatas that I didn't even know existed, so it's not like anything came off the list with the exception of that Donatello. But what are you still on the hunt for, Greg?
Well, I'm always after more LJNs that are less than perfect because I'm really enjoying customizing them into different costumes, different ring attire for the various wrestlers. I think the next one I'm after, now that Chris has another axe coming my way, is probably Jake the Snake Roberts, and I think what I'm going to do with him is his tights from WrestleMania 3, his match against the Honky Tonk Man when Jake had Alice Cooper in his corner, helping him uh, handle Damien the Python and send him after Jimmy Hart after the match. And because that attire was really kind of catching my eye. It's black with a silver snake going up the one leg and a spider web on his other hip.
Oh,
And yeah, so it's very fitting to the Alice Cooper theme.
yeah.
And I think that might look pretty sharp. And he doesn't even have to have his Damien snake accessory. I'm sure I can find any old rubber snake at any toy store, and that'll do just fine for me.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if you wouldn't be able to mold one, considering the LJN one was really kind of snake shaped. I guess
Mm-hmm.
it's just a long flat when you used to roll out Play-Doh real thin, and then that's kind of what it reminded me of. It sat nice on the figure, but there wasn't very much detail to it.
Yep. Yeah, I might be able to make something even better.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, for me, the turtle journey continues. The list is dwindling down now to the things that are probably very, very out of the league. It's going to take a small fortune investment to come away with things like the undercover turtles and some of the metal mutants and some of the Japanese super mutants, but they're out there. I've seen them. I see them every now and then. Somebody will pop up. I mean, I've said to myself the same thing with other ones that have slowly but surely made their way into my collection over the past 2 years. So it's just a matter of the right math equation. How much funds can be spared, and is the merchandise available for that same amount? And that always seems to be the perfect marriage. So, but I have been tinkering more with the Sofubi and the Shogun stuff, and Godzilla's the X Plus, the Garage Toys, that sort of thing. There's not really a list, but just because it was made so sporadically, the Sofubi stuff that I've kind of been looking at now is all over the place. You can have one piece that has six different paint jobs, and maybe there's a one-off paint job. So it's not really a what am I hunting for? It's more, is that cool when I find it type of situation. So yeah, so that was Toyhio. Any other stories or any other gems that we forgot about for Toyhio, Greg?
Hmm. I think that pretty much covers it. In the vein of wrestler guests, Rick's got a couple coming up at his toy stores that he operates, which is kind of cool. He has the Honky Tonk Man coming to Time Capsule Toys, and he has Thunder Rosa coming to Monsters in the Toy Box, does he not?
Yeah, yeah. There's I think March 7th or 8th for Honky, and then Stone Cold Day 316 for Thunder Rosa at Monsters in the Toy Box. So if you're listening to this and you're a wrestling fan and it's pre those dates, definitely check it out. I think Thunder Rosa's was kind of a surprise. I think both of them, if you talk to Rick, were kind of surprise gets. He usually saves the guests for the Toyhio shows, but these were some opportunities that he had to uh, bring folks in sooner than the next show. So I'm sure he'll fill the guest spots for the next Toyhio soon enough. but these are a couple of stops to tide folks over. So should be some unique opportunities to meet a WWFE legend and an AEW star, as it were, respectively, here within the next few weeks. So don't miss out on those. And then Toy Hire returns this summer. Uh, in June. You have the date, Greg? I'm terrible with that stuff.
I had it here right in front of me, I believe. June 21st.
June
That's what I have.
21st. Toy Hire returns to the Metroplex Expo Center in Girard, Ohio. And you can find out all about that stuff just by following the appropriate social media channels. Most of them branded Toyhio. So
Hmm.
yeah, and then it was the week after that that was the Hoosier Collecticon Part Deux, um, or two for those folks who didn't who took Spanish in high school instead of French. Um, I didn't go. I know, Greg, you didn't go. I think we talked about this. We heard about this. It was just 7 hours one way for a couple of show patrons is a that's a bit of a stretch. But after the stories that I heard and some of the photos that I saw, there's another one in September that might be on the radar because it looks like it was something else. So
Yes, yes, it
um,
does.
I had a conversation with a vendor that was out there that basically said, you know, this is a show that has incredibly good pricing on things that in our area we would be priced out of. And that's kind of funny the way that you think about that because that's how it works. For those of you who might be non-Western Pennsylvania, Eastern Ohio, South, Western New York listeners, the toy shows you have in your neck of the woods in, wherever it may be, the Pacific Northwest or, Florida, the prices and the demand on things it's almost like it's regional, because stuff we have here survives. Maybe down in Florida, it's a different set of stuff that survives. So, there might be an abundance of something we have a shortage of, and therefore the pricing reflects that. And I find that to be incredibly fascinating in the toy collecting world because you don't know where those regional dividers are. But to hear about some of the prices on things that were going on out in Indianapolis really gave me FOMO really bad. So I will say that thanks to our friend Chris from VHS Crypt, I am the proud owner of a store display uh, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles sleeping bag. So, what is a tour display Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles sleeping bag? Okay, so for anybody who's ever walked into a sporting goods section and seen the miniature versions of a tent fully displayed, so you don't have to actually have a full blown tent display. It looks like it's a tent for action figures, but it's really just a very small version of what you'd actually buy. They did the same thing for sleeping bags. It's a basically maybe 16 inches tall, you know, 8 inches wide sleeping bag. It's a sleeping bag for a Smurf, but
Hmm.
it's really meant to be hung up or put on the back of a display. So above the rack of the actual sleeping bags that you could buy, so you could see the artwork and know what it is. So he sent me a photo of that while I was sitting at dinner when he was setting up over there and said, I bet you don't have this. And he was spot on. I did not have that. So he was able to facilitate that deal for me. Amongst some other things that I did not pull the trigger on that he sent me, and that's when the FOMO really started hitting, was because I had heard what was there. I also know that a vendor that it is hit and miss for our show, but always sets up a Toyhio, sold his entire booth, everything in his entire booth on setup night. Like
Wow.
literally somebody bought the entire booth. So not only was there stuff to be had, but there were deals to be made out there. So, um, they were talking about pre-production stuff just being in dig bins. That's your prototypes and first shots just being kind of like in dig bins, not for dig bin prices, but in a bin where you would see that prominently displayed under glass if you were in our area. So that's the kind of stuff that I was like, wow. Your Ecto Glow Ghostbuster, the rarest real Ghostbusters line, just prominently available out there. Lots of that, store display, really unique things. There was a front glass of the Turtle Toss or Pizza Toss Turtle arcade game where you basically, threw the pizza through the hole or dropped it through the hole and it bounced. It was a ticket kind of game in an arcade, but it was the glass front for that. That was just some of the stuff and this is just me speaking through photos. So I don't know, Greg, if you saw anything like that that kind of was shock and awe for you from that standpoint.
Hmm. No one thing really stood out to me, but it was clearly um, impressive stuff as far as the eye could see, like everywhere you looked. It's yeah, that may well have to be a destination we consider for a
Mhm.
future installment of of that particular show.
Yeah. Yeah. And that one is Froggy Flips. YouTube, right, Greg? Froggy Flips is a YouTube guy,
I
if I'm
think
not
so.
mistaken. Yeah. So that's his show. So a very prominent gentleman in the toy community has a YouTube channel who does hunts. I think he's been to Toyhio. He's been to Toy Palooza in the Pittsburgh area to do his toy hunt videos. It's his show. It's south of Indianapolis, Greenville, Indiana, if I'm not mistaken, which is just kind of on that beltway around Indianapolis. So you're not in the city proper. You're kind of on the outskirts. On your way around Indianapolis. If you've ever traveled through, you kind of don't go through. You go around in a circle outside the city, and Greenville's kind of at the 6 o'clock position of if you're looking north and south on a map. So it's definitely something that I've kind of already earmarked the date for in September, which I see is September 14th for Hoosier Collecticon 3. So we might have to start pulling some strings to not miss out on that one just from everything that I've heard because it sounds like it's a collector paradise, to be honest. So might
Hmm.
be one to target on the calendar if we can make it work. So it's not a fun drive, but it would be fun knowing that that was on the other end of it, and then the ride home would be easy with that kind of stuff in the passenger seat, right, Greg?
Yep, that
So,
helps.
all right, and then just this past weekend, like I said, there was the Carved and Ice Festival, which kind of worked out in Butler, Pennsylvania. They got a lot of the stuff done. You had the hot dog eating contest and the chili cook off and the sweet baker bake off, I guess you could say. But the reason I touch on it is because it was another chance for me, and I think you might have been the night before to visit our friend Evan at Main Level Games in Butler,
Indeed.
PA. So um, Evan's a great friend of ours, very successful entrepreneur. Opened a vintage video game shop in Butler, PA, and he has been gracious enough to us to help promote toy shows and even this here podcast, with space in the shop. But every time I go into the shop, I just see new stuff. He's through. I think this is the second location for him, but this one is kind of like it's pristine. He's got some just beautiful display cabinets full of some great inbox games, which for vintage video game folks, yeah, you can dig through a box and sift through cartridges, which is just like a comic book collector. You're sifting through with your fingers. You're going one after the other. But then there's the whole other level of not seeing the box artwork, which is what I love most about going into his store, is just perusing that old storefront box artwork kind of display cabinets, which he has. And I think we both have kind of made it separately, but we kind of, tongue in cheek say that that's probably where we should meet up on Saturdays, because that's where everybody goes from us on
Yeah,
Saturdays.
yeah,
But
we're all regulars there.
yeah, it always seems to be the same day too, but different times of the day. But I go in with my son and my wife on Saturdays when we're out and about. And this week it was, Main Street was kind of shut down in front of the store, so we kind of got to partake in the atmosphere, and then also pick up some stuff. I was the thing that I got this week that I was the most jazzed about was the Xena game for Super Nintendo. I didn't care for the game too much myself playing it, but this one had the box, so the box artwork, that sort of thing. I'm a Xena fan, so having that in the collection, even if I don't ever take it out, actually it's N64. I apologize, N64 game. I think I said Super Nintendo, but that was the big score for me this week. Not crazy priced, just something that, I mean, how often do you come across that game in the box, to have that? So, and every time we go in there, my son wants something different now. He wants a new 3DS, not the 3DS, the new 3DS, because of course you find a game that's only compatible with a system and you don't have that system, so you have to buy that system. So that's the rub when it comes to that type of stuff. But I'm telling you, man, if you're looking for it, if it's not there, it will be there. Evan finds this stuff. I don't know how he does it. Folks come in obviously and sell collections. So if you're looking to do that, you can look him up. But he still finds things that I can't believe survived, I guess you could say. Greg, you were able to find some unique, unique pieces there over the last few weeks, were you not?
Indeed. Yes, I found stuff not from this country. Evan got in some Japanese inventory, and I got actually it ended up being five Famicom games, which Famicom being the Japanese equivalent of the NES, but it's the similar but not the same. They require an adapter for uh, American games to be played on the Japanese console or vice versa. And I got Mega Man 2, 3, 4, and 5, which in Japan is known as Rockman 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I also got the Japanese Sherlock Holmes game, which never came out in the United States. And of course, I ordered a Famicom adapter to try and play them, but it didn't seem to work in my old front loader first model NES. So I passed that to my son, and he has a newer top loader model, and it worked fine for him, and so he's enjoying that. And I also found a copy of what was it? All Japan Pro Wrestling
Mm.
women's wrestling from the '90s. It's a Joshi Puro game, which there were a few of on the SNES, and I honestly haven't played it as much as I probably should have yet. And I was able to play that because my third-party SNES unit that I use can play games from Japan without any sort of adapter.
Mm.
Because the difference was more physical as opposed to technical with SNES games, and so that was a pretty neat pickup. And yeah, the prices were all um, quite good, I thought. And so that led me to my mission this past weekend, which was to find, hopefully, an adapter for to play Famicom games on the NES, which is actually concealed inside certain early releases of NES games. Some of them you were able to unscrew them, and the game on the inside is not a not an NES game. It is a Famicom game with an NES adapter stuck to it.
Mm.
And So if you open that up and take that apart, you've got yourself an officially licensed Famicom to NES adapter.
Huh.
And I did not find, there are a few tells to find as to which games may have one in them, and they're not easy to come by. And there were none at the time. Chances are there have been, but at this present time there were not. But I will continue looking, and I'm sure he will get them eventually, and I will bring one home and give it a shot.
Yeah, yeah, he that's pretty much a guarantee, you know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he has he's a couple games in the store, you know, kind of top, we'll call them top shelf games. Was that the one is a that Rule of the Rose is a PS4 game. It's like $800 game. He's got a copy of that. He's got the DuckTales 2 for NES. You know, it's like a $300
Yes.
cartridge. You know,
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that you have to go to shows like a Toyhio or something like that to see, let alone, finding it in the storefront where you can go, basically Wednesday through Saturday and just pick it up, store hours. So, that's the kind of thing that also, boggles my mind. So if you're a video game collector, main level games in Butler, Pennsylvania is definitely becoming a big destination as well. So, um, you
Indeed.
know,
Yeah. The one that caught my eyes was the Toxic Crusaders game for Game Boy, which is one
oh,
of the, I think, one of the four rarest games ever produced for the original Game Boy console. And he happened to have one sitting there smack dab in the middle of the big display case. And I don't know if I'd ever break the bank for it, but it's sure cool to see it. And I believe he's had more than one that's sold. So chances are somebody's going to take that home someday. So if you want one, head on in there and get it.
yeah, that'll fit right in the Super Game Boy adapter, and you can play it on the big screen because he's
Mm-hmm.
got a couple of those as well, including one in
Yes,
the
I bought one there
box.
myself.
So, yeah, talking to him on Saturday. I mean, we're at the end of February, 2025. If you're not in the time machine, but he has over 50 tested and ready to sell consoles, ready to go. So he got hit pretty hard over the holiday season, but he has done tremendous work. And again, that boggles my mind because it's not like you can just order this stuff from an inventory warehouse. You have to find it or have somebody bring it to you. But you will not be disappointed. That is for sure. If you take a trip down that direction. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I know, Greg, you didn't get a chance to go down to Carved in Ice because you were partaking in something completely different on this past Saturday.
I was. Yep. I went up to visit our good friend Mark at Bell's Comics and Cars in Grove City. And yeah, he's a dear friend of the KRG crew. And I was happy to see what he's up to there. And Bell's is always a great place to visit to get sports cards or any sort of gaming supply or all the comic books you could want and various action figures. It's really a cool place, but it is growing um, because Mark has now basically expanded to the storefront next to his, which had been a Taekwondo place,
Mm.
but that has moved elsewhere. So Mark is now expanding that into extra gaming room and even adding uh, buying game consoles to add in there, actually arcade games to add in there, and he's building an arcade. It was going to be known as the Markcade, and he had a um, small opening of it at this past weekend. With the games aren't in yet, but he had vendors selling games and toys and crafts, and our friend Christian, who vends at our show, was there, and I got a few goodies off of him. I
Mm.
was very happy to find a Masters of the Universe Blade figure with the swords, which I very much needed for my collection, and another Junkyard Dog LJN figure for me to repaint, which I will have to decide what to do with the old JYD. And yeah, the Marcade's going to be great. It is opening up April 19th. He has the ticket counter all ready to go, so you can win tickets and cash them in for cool prizes, just like it was Chuck E. Cheese.
Nice,
and
nice.
it's gonna be fantastic. I can't wait to go and play games.
Yeah, I know that little swap and shop up there. I actually I knew about it, but it was one of those things that was like there was six or seven different things that were possibly happening on Saturday, including a Penguin game, which I had tickets to till kind of the last minute as well. So when it came time to make a decision, it was like throwing a dart amongst a bunch of post-it notes, and that one was missed until you had mentioned that you were up there. And I'm glad glad you got to partake because, like you said, Mark's a great guy. Has always been very key in the I guess you call it the fandom realm space in the area, with Bell's being up there and comics, toys, gaming, and now an arcade. So if you're in the Grove City area or just stopping by, near Grove City College or Slippery Rock University, it's definitely worth a jaunt up there to see what's cooking in that neck of the woods for sure. So I will make it up there for sure, especially if when the Marcade, I guess, when that opens, which sounds like that's coming in the very near future. Is that the gist, Greg?
Yep, April 19th is the date that he has on social media. We'll see if it opens gradually over time, but I think the grand opening shall be April 19th.
Mm,
I'm looking forward to it.
all right. Well, like I said, it wasn't no crazy stories. Nothing really in depth, but we still managed to brave the cold in some aspects in the month of February and get out to a few events. And I think now is the time that things are starting to ramp up, starting in the very near future with Horror Realm, which is another friend of ours, Rich, his show in the Pittsburgh area. That's a horror convention, horror movies, horror genre. I think that we're both going to try to make it there, whether it's at the same time or separately. It's a 3-day show, and then after that we have I think Xenia is happening, which is a big toy show down in the Cincinnati area towards the end of March. And then we really start to ramp up with things like Steel City Con, Toyapalooza. April is birthday month in my house, and that's not including everything else that I may be missing right now that is coming in the next 6 to 8 weeks, I guess you could say. So, our every other every other week or once a month podcasting through the winter months is probably going to be ramping up a good bit, I would say, with not only our attendance at things, but also special interest podcasts like maybe a little history lesson on Rube Waddell in the near
Mm-hmm.
future. So, um,
Yep, a lot of fun stuff coming down the pike.
yep, for sure, for sure. So, anything you're particularly looking forward to, Greg, over the next couple of months that really stands out as a big bright spot on the calendar?
Well, Horror Realm's always a good one, and that's right around the corner. So I'm quite happy. In fact, it may have already happened by the time you're listening to this. You never know. But if it hasn't, then I suggest checking it out because they've got a pretty cool lineup coming. And there's also, yeah, Steel City Con is starting to tempt me,
Yeah.
and as it always does. And yeah, Cinema Wasteland over in Cleveland is doing much the same, and that's the same weekend. But I think if I really want to, I can pull off going to both. So we'll see how that works out.
Mm, that's a marathon. That's a marathon run, but it's not impossible. That's what that's
Yeah,
that's
they're
a
both
nice.
3-day shows.
That's
So
exactly right. That's what's nice about some of these 3-dayers. And then the beginning of May, that the first weekend in May is a true flipping of a coin in a lot of aspects because it seems like everything happens that weekend. And this year, there's something else thrown into the mix for us with the kaiju big battle. Wrestling in kaiju costumes. I mean, how do you not go to that, right? I mean, that's one of
yeah,
those things. It's like a no-brainer. If you've listened to the podcast, you know that that's going to be one that's difficult for us to pass up, but that's also a big Star Wars weekend as well. So we'll be
Hmm.
running all over the place at the beginning of May. That's for certain. But yeah, so hopefully, hopefully or not hopefully, depending on the pulse of how you feel about this episode, there won't be a potpourri episode for a little while. We'll probably be a little bit more pointed with all the stuff's going on, but um, you know, it's fun. We do things even when there's things that aren't to be done. I guess you could say that's the best way to put this episode, right, Greg? Is we'll find
Yep.
something to do.
Indeed,
So,
we will. Yeah, there will be plenty to talk about, I am sure.
all righty. Well, folks, thank you for listening, and please head over to all your podcast apps and subscribe so you don't miss an occasional episode of this sort of stuff. Give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. We're all over the social media dial. You can go check out our other ventures by clicking on those links, especially in our podcast social media where we share that. We'll probably share, if I think we might have already shared some of the stuff we picked up at Toyhio. If that interests you, you can kind of get a visualization for some of the things we talked about. But if you have any interest in being a guest or submitting a question, you can email us at yinzdahn@gmail.com or shoot us a message over on those social media channels. But any last minute plugs or anything, any words of wisdom for the audience, Greg?
I think I pretty much covered it. Yeah, there's lots of cool stuff coming up. If you see something you are interested in and you heard about it here, tell them Yinz Dahn sent you, and they'll look at you like you have two heads. But hey, we appreciate the little promotion.
Hey, at least they'll look at you, right? That's
Yep.
the way to think about it. But all right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for the listen, thanks for the download, thank you for the likes, because I know that's where you're going next, is to give us some likes. But everybody have a safe one, and we will talk to you on the next episode. Good night, everybody.